Okay, our first examination is over, and I hope you did well on your examination here. All right, it's time for us to begin our second block of instruction here. We're actually into Lecture 9 here. We've got about 5 weeks before we go into our second examination. All right, now we're going to be talking today. In fact, it's going to require about 3 lectures, almost 3 lectures, to go through another civilization, which is called the Roman civilization. And I can tell you right now that before the Greek civilization ended, another civilization is going to rise to power. This will be a society. It's going to be located primarily on the Tiber River, and I will tell you that by the time of Alexander the Great, this civilization is going to be the most dominant, the most powerful on the Italian peninsula. Now I want you to be very careful with this. We cannot say Italy. Italy is not formed here. We will not see Italy to be created until 1860, and that will be next semester. So the only thing I can do to describe it accurately is to say the Italian peninsula. So let's go back to my documents camera and let's see what we're talking about. Roman civilization, and as I said, they're going to develop, they're going to be founded around the area of the Tiber River. Today, if you visit Rome, if you listen to the Romans speak, they refer to it as the Tevere River, the Tevere River. We have corrupted that in English, and we call it the Tiber River. So let me show you what it looks like here, and we'll place a photograph. I took this photograph in Rome, and a number of years ago. You can see what the Tevere River looks like. Traditionally, it would flood, and of course, this would overflow its banks, flood the city itself. And today, if you look over to this side over here, you can see the dam, or actually it's a wall here, and you find the same thing on the other side here that prevents the Tiber River from actually overflowing. Looking at the background, you can see a number of the many bridges that span the Tiber River, and this structure in the background right here, for those of you that are familiar with Dan Brown's Angels and Demons, that was a structure there which is called the Castle of San Angelo, and that's where the bad guy actually lived, and where he was carrying out his heinous deeds there and going through the tunnel over into the Vatican itself. So anyway, it's kind of a fun place to visit. In fact, it's a remarkable place to visit. And I'm looking at your textbook here. I'm on page 146 in your textbook, and I'm going to just briefly show you this because I can't help but get excited about that. When we look at this structure here, I don't know if you know what that is. See if I can darken it a little bit, get a little contrast to that. But that is a Colosseum. I've got so much to tell you about the Colosseum. Not today. We'll wait until another lecture there, but it's a magnificent structure there, and it makes me just feel homesick and having to look at that and not be able to be there myself here. All right, the Roman civilization is going to last for about 600 years. Now, that's what I tell you, and that comes out of your textbook. But quite frankly here, you're going to hear me talk about the Roman civilization for about the next 1,000 years. And that'll be some of the descendants that came from the Romans. It's going to spread throughout much of Western Europe, Northern Africa, and much of that occupied by Alexander the Great. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my camera here, and I want you to look over my shoulder, and I'm going to try to get out of your way a little bit. And everything that you see painted in this color here, that pink type color, that's all Roman-controlled areas there. Now, if you look at it carefully, here's the Mediterranean Sea, and all of this area that surrounds this, all Roman-controlled areas. So often this is referred to, the Mediterranean is referred to as a Roman lake, because that's actually what it is. It's a Roman lake because Rome controls all of it. So let's go back to my camera here, and let's pick up our discussion here. Now, Rome was actually occupied by 3 other civilizations here. We had one group called the Etruscans. I'll talk to you about them in just a few minutes. The Greeks likewise, and then the Latins. Some people refer to them as Romans. Now, if we look at the Italian peninsula, it has little mineral resources, has few harbors. Without going back to a map here, you'll just have to listen to me. The harbors that you see are primarily on the western side. We don't see that many harbors over on the eastern side other than that of Venice, and which is a nice harbor in itself there. You owe it to yourself to visit there. It had the Italian peninsula. It was an agrarian environment. It is today. It's very open to invasion, more so than that of Greece. When you think about to the north of Italy, or the Italian peninsula, you think about the Alps that are present there, the Italian Alps. But there are many passes that allow you to go, from the interior of Europe and actually pass down into the Italian peninsula itself, the Italian mainland here. All right, so let's get back to some of our groups here, and I want to talk to you about the Etruscans. The Etruscans, I'm not really sure where they came from. In all probability, they were just native to the Italian peninsula here. But by 600 BCE, they were in the northern and the central sections to the Italian peninsula. It will help you if you'll look at your textbook on page 151. And if you're looking at the kind of dark brown or kind of the brownish area, those are some of the Etruscan-controlled areas here. Now, the Etruscans used an alphabet that was based on Greek. They were skilled metal workers. They exhibited aggressive trade with the West. They worshiped gods in human forms. And I'm not going to tell you who those gods are now, but when we talked about the Greek gods, and later in the class period we'll be with the Roman gods. And just imagine, it's going to be the same gods, but with different names for the Etruscans. For the Etruscans, they were very capable with their art, quite good with sculpture. Let me share some things with you here. These are showing some of the Etruscan sculptures, or their sculptures, their carvings, their paintings here. And they were very good with that. They had great respect for their women. This is so different than that of the Greeks, because the Greeks did not. So I keep from having the contrast here. I'll show you in your textbook here. If you look at the textbook photograph, it's showing you a man and woman. And this is a Etruscan relief. So it shows you that there is affection, between the two. For the women were able to dine with their husbands. They would lie with their husbands, retire with their husbands, and they were even buried in the same vault with their husband. So different than that of what we saw in the Greek society. All right, let's go back to my camera. And for the Etruscans, they practiced with gladiatorial events, was one of the things that they did. And let me get myself back on track here too. They developed or gave us a concept of the arch, the vault. As you well know, I don't draw very well at all, so I've just tried to make the best I can do with that. Just imagine an arch. This would be like the entranceway over to the Rowland Center, and if you put a little three-dimensional effect on it there, that's what we have with the vault. So these are the Etruscans here, a rather unique society here. Okay, so let's move on into the Greeks. We've talked about some of this before. The Greeks contributed an alphabet. They gave mythology to this. There'll be different names. The Greeks had earlier established somewhere around 800 to 600 BCE establishments on the southern coastline, primarily on the southern coastline of the Italian peninsula, Croton, Posidonia, and then going up in kind of in the south and the western part, we have Neapolis or Naples, the new city. These are the Greeks here, and they had some contributions. Okay, so let's move on here. And for the Latins, and let's spend a few minutes here talking about the Latins. Let me get myself back on track here. And Rome was established, it is thought anyway, and I'm going to give you the story on this, and you can use your own imagination with this, but Rome was founded in the year 753 BCE by two orphan children that were known as Romulus and Remus. And Romulus and Remus, the way the Roman mythology goes, that they were abandoned in a Tiber River in a wicker basket, kind of like a Moses story that you know about anyway, and that these two little babies were adrift in the Tiber River, and that they were rescued by a she-wolf, a female wolf, and she nursed the two little infants here, Romulus and Remus, and nursed them into to where they could survive on their own. It's a very famous, very popular story here. You read an article that says fact or legend here, showing you the two little children, Romulus and Remus, that were nursing from the she-wolf here. And anyway, those were the two original leaders and founders of Rome. Later, Remus would become critical of Romulus, and the King Romulus would have Remus killed. If you look at this here, this is a common thing that you'll see in the city of Rome here. And you see the she-wolf mounted on a column. You see the two little infants, Romulus and Remus, who were nursing from the she-wolf. If you look down below this, you can see the letters there, S-P-Q-R. S-P-Q-R, Senatus Populescus Romanum, the Roman people and citizens there. All right, but anyway, quite a popular thing there. And by the way, that SPQR, when you walk the streets of Rome today, you'll see SPQR everywhere you go. And I mean, manhole covers, just anything you see on the streets, it just always has, the Roman Senate and people present on there, SPQR. And that's kind of interesting here. Okay, from the year 753 to 509, the Roman government, and we don't know a whole lot about this, but the Roman government existed as a king and a senate. Now, we think that the king probably had the power of life and death, and that the Senate probably served in only advisory roles. And anyway, that is what is thought anyway. All right, up until the year 509, it's thought, and at least thought, that there was perhaps 7 kings, of which 3 of those were Etruscans. Now, for the king was always surrounded by the 12 lictors, and the lictors always carried the fasces. All right, now, I want you to know that, particularly that with the fasces. And if you don't know what the fasces is, the fasces is a bundle of sticks that surrounds an axe. It symbolizes the power of life and death. Here we have another rendering here showing you the fasces, an axe surrounded by a bundle of sticks. Symbolizes the power of life and death. Here are the 12 lictors. This is reenactors. But these 12 lictors that always surround the king, and they're carrying, if you look here, you can see where the fasces is located right there. And I like that, and I like that story. So the fasces symbolizes power, and we associate it with the Romans. But I want you to take a look at a coin, and this is a coin. It's a United States coin, and I'm old enough I can remember these in circulation. This coin is dated 1945, and I'm going to tell you, you may think that I'm an elderly individual, and perhaps I am, but I was not born in 1945. But this type of dime that we have, this dime is known as a Mercury Dime. It preceded that of the Roosevelt dime that you recognize today. Now, this is U.S. currency here, folks. You won't find them in circulation today. They've been replaced. If you would find one in circulation today, it would be almost a miracle, and certainly you'll need to save that. But let's take a look at the reverse surface of this dime. And like I said, this is an American coin, and we'll look at it. Let me get it positioned right here, and I think that, let's see. Here it is. Anyway, and if you look at the reverse surface on this United States dime, can you, as I'm trying to get the contrast right for you folks, can you see the fasces? And I hope you can see that, So this was an emblem that was present on the United States coin there, symbolizing the power of the country, the power of the United States. All right, and that's kind of interesting with that. Around 509 BCE, Rome changed its form of government. Instead of having a king, they changed over to a republic. There's an interesting story that's involved in this, and it's a story which was written by Livy, and it's called the Rape of Lucretia. And supposedly in the year 510, the king of Rome at that time was an Etruscan. But nevertheless, the king, who's known as Tarquin the Proud, had a son, and this son whose name was Sextus Tarquinius. And supposedly the son of Tarquin the Proud raped a Roman wife, Lucretia. It's called the Rape of Lucretia. And as a result of that, according to this story anyway, by Livy, according to the story, then the Roman people revolted against the Etruscan people and overthrew them. And over the course of the next couple hundred years, they would gradually just meld or mold the Etruscan people into the Roman lifestyle itself. Now, during the first 200 years of the early Republic, there was almost constant warfare. At first, Rome was on the defensive. Later, they would be on the offensive. And then by the year 265, Rome would control 75% of the Italian peninsula. Now, in Roman history here, there's several mythological individuals. One which is called Horatio. And Horatio and two friends held off an entire army while defending against an enemy army. Another individual is that of Cincinnatus. If you look in your textbook, you can see a likeness here of Cincinnatus. You translate the word Cincinnatus, it means like curly hair, and Cincinnatus, the statesman farmer. He was the original Minuteman who would drop his farming implements and take up the weapons of war to try to protect Rome. And if you'll notice in the hand there of Cincinnatus, what is he carrying? And he's carrying the fasces, the axe surrounded by the bundle of sticks. All right, all very, very interesting here. Okay, so shall we move along with this? And we'll see in the Republic. Oh, hang on here, I almost knocked off my microphone here. And I tell you what, let's do. Let's just interrupt ourselves a little bit. And I want to go into the Roman army, and then we'll come back to the description here of the Republic. But Rome is known for its magnificent army. And so I think you'll see this on one of your included videos. So let me get out a typical photograph, or I should say a typical rendering here, showing you a Roman soldier. And this Roman soldier is fighting some person from Gaul or someplace like that. Anyway, and if you look at the Roman soldier, you can see the fighting posture that he takes. Notice the shield, notice the sword that you have here. And during times of combat, that shield can actually be lifted over the head. If you look down here, is what I'm trying to show you anyway. It can actually be lifted over the head or turned to the side so that it forms like a barrier. This protects you against arrow barrages or people trying to jump on top of you, something on that order. All right, so let's go to a different view of a Roman soldier, and there he is right here. Okay, so what I want to do, let's take a few seconds here, and we'll just describe this Roman soldier and the organization that he fights in. Now, the Roman soldier himself is known as a legionary, and anyway, he's a part of a large element, and this is the largest part in a Roman army. It's called a legion. This legion is made up of about 500 men, about 5,000 men to 5,500 men. That is, if it's at full strength, in all probability it will not be full strength. It'll be about 4,000 will be the maximum size to the legion here if it's not full strength. Now, a legion is made up of several cohorts. In fact, it'll be about 7 to 9 cohorts. A cohort, this is a basic fighting unit here, has about 600 soldiers here. The number one cohort, which is like a head and headquarters company, some of you can relate to what I'm talking about with that, will have about 1,000. And that's where all your administrative work, your logistical work will take place with that. But the regular cohort is about 600 soldiers. It'd be the equivalent of about a battalion in the army today. Now, your basic fighting unit is that of a century. A century, obviously, is 100 men. Is commanded by a centurion. A centurion is a sergeant and will lead these individuals into combat. On occasion, we'll have a maniple. A maniple is 2 centuries, so you can do your math on that to figure out how many are found, within a cohort, or how many are found within a legion. If you do your math on this, you'll find that about 50 centuries make up a legion, if that legion is at full strength. All right, now, I told you a few seconds ago, the individual himself is referred to as a legionary, and that's what you're seeing right here. If we go into his equipment, and I'm going to break it down for you here, we look at the head, and let me slide this down so you can see this. For the headgear is covered, or the head is covered with a bronze helmet, such as what you're seeing here. Use a little bit of imagination and notice how the back of the neck is covered. And if you'll look in this area here, look in this area where I'm pointing here, you have these flaps, these cheek flaps, that can actually lift up to provide a little bit of coolness, but during the times of combat, of course, they can fit down over the cheeks. That will provide protection here. For the young officers will decorate on the top of the cassia here, will decorate it with feathers or something like that, you know, just to indicate what your rank is. All right, now, if you notice here this term which is called, let me pronounce it for you, cuirass. Cuirass. Now your cuirass is your body armor. It's formed of articulating iron. This is where it is located right here. It provides protection to the body. That is the cuirass. All right. And notice the shield. The shield, which is referred to as a scutum. It's a long rectangular shield. Later, as the Romans would evolve, we find this to be an oval shield. It's very effective. It will prevent the penetration of a spear or sword. And you can take it like I said, and just actually lift it over your head, and it provides a shield from incoming arrows with that. As we continue with the accoutrements of the Roman legionary, let me push this down a little bit further. You'll find a sword. Where am I going here? You'll find a sword here, and this sword, which is 24 inches in length, is called. This sword is referred to as a gladius. And that's your basic fighting weapon there. If you notice, can you see this one? We got I don't see it here. I'd have to show it on the other legionary that I took away a few minutes ago. And you cannot see this, but there's also a secondary weapon, which is called a Pujol. Now, a Pujol is a backup short sword. It's a dagger, and in case you're in combat, you get disarmed, you know, you can draw that dagger, and it serves as a secondary weapon here. Notice here we also have the long red cloak. And it serves multi-purposes. It can shield the sun from you. It also provides a blanket. It serves as a poncho or like a raincoat for the legionary in adverse weather conditions. So it's very effective. If we go down below this, we can see the leather walking shoes, the leather walking sandals that are present here. For many of these legionaries, they will walk literally hundreds and hundreds of miles. So you have to have this sturdy footwear. Often the walking is done on cobblestone, so you know it's rough walking. Even in the shoes that we have today, if you walk on the Appian Way or you walk on some of these old Roman cobblestone roads, it's not comfortable for you. Please believe me, folks. All right, now another weapon that is used, if we go to this side of the individual here, of the legionary, and we get a javelin. This is a javelin. It's like a harpoon, like a whaler's harpoon, and it's referred to as a pilum. It's made of short metal, or I should say soft metal. Here it is right here. It's soft metal. And what it's designed to do is that when it is thrown like a spear, if it hits the shield of your opponent here, it will penetrate that shield, and then the soft metal here will bend. It bends down in this area here, and it causes the bottom side of the pilum to go over the shield, and it strikes the individual in the head. You know, so it's a very effective weapon there with the pilum. All right, so that's basically the type of weaponry that this legionary has. Okay, so let's move right along. And as I said a few minutes ago, I want to go back to the type of government that we had. Hang on, I'm knocking my microphone all over the place here. And let's take our attention back up here to the Republic. The Republic will stay in place here from the year 509 to 27 before the Common Era, BCE. And how it differs from the original government, instead of having the two kings, or instead of having a king, we have two consuls. Now, the consuls are the leaders. They are elected by members of the Senate. It gets a little bit confusing here. At first, the Senate was made up of 100 senators. Later, it was 200. Later, it was 300. The senators are elected. They serve for life. This is in your upper class. This is your aristocracy here. The two consuls have veto power. Veto meaning I forbid. So each one of the consuls can veto the other consul and nullify some kind of provision that person enacted if necessary. Now, in the Roman society and the aristocracy, the upper class is referred to as Patricians. Now, work on your pronunciation with that. Patricians, that's your aristocracy, makes up about 2% of the populations, and everyone else in Rome, or if you're referred to as lower class, they're called plebeians. plebeians. For those of you that may be familiar with the United States Military Academy at West Point, your first semester, your first year as a student at West Point, you're referred to as a plebe. In other words, you can get no lower. So a plebeian is a lower individual here. So we have patricians, which are the aristocracy, the plebeians, which are the just the common person here, making up about 97-98% of the people. All right. And for the plebeians, they have no voice in the government whatsoever. In fact, you're subject, the laws at that time were unwritten. I have that out here. It is. The laws at that time were unwritten, and the laws were interpreted by the patricians. All right. But gradually what we're going to find here is that the laws will become written. They're referred to as the Law of the 12 Tables. And at first, if you look at the Roman Republic, patricians, or I should say senators, are strictly patricians. But according to the stories anyway, the plebeians, which made up your army, the plebeians refused to fight. They refused to fight until they got a voice in the government. And we're going to see a new element to be placed in place there, which are called the magistrates. And the magistrates which protect the rights of the plebeians. Eventually, as the Roman history goes on, we'll find plebeians becoming magistrates. Plebeians will become eventually senators. So plebeians will become consuls. If you're a consul, you're a senator for life. So the plebeians eventually do get a little bit of power with this. All right, so let's see where we need to go next. And I want to talk to you about some of these Roman gods. And I want you to match these up now with the Greek gods that we had before. The mightiest god, the god of the skies, is that of Jupiter. And of course, if you match that up with that of the Greek god, is Zeus. We also have Neptune. Neptune is the god of the sea, the god of the waters, if you will. And of course, the Greek equivalent would be that of Poseidon. We have Venus. Venus is the love god, the goddess of love. The equivalent to that in the Greek society is Aphrodite. Mars is the god of war. And if you match that up to the Greek society, it's Ares. Mercury's the messenger god, and Mercury equates to that, if you will, Hermes. And Pluto, which is a god of the underworld, matches to that of Hades. In the Roman society, there are no sacraments, there's no emphasis, if you will, on rewards for good deeds or punishments for bad deeds here. The gods, in turn, reward the Romans by rewarding the community and rewarding the state here. The early Romans were patriotic, they had respect for authority, they were brave, honorable, and self-disciplined. All right, now Rome was involved in a series of wars, and these wars are referred to as the Punic Wars. And I want you to recognize that. These wars are called the Punic Wars. The wars of the Punic Wars are Rome against Carthage. Now, the Roman word for Carthage is Puni, or Punic. So we give them the name the Punic Wars. And there are three of these wars that we want to talk about. And we may be able to get through all three of these today. All right, now, in the first Punic War, and by the way, with Carthage, Carthage is located, let me show you here. I'm going to flip back to my map here. And where the Carthaginian Empire is located, it's down here in the northern parts of Africa, up here, and it's also up here where Phoenicia is located. In fact, that's what the Carthaginians are. They're descendants of the Phoenicians. So let's go back to my documents camera here. All right, our first Punic War will take place here from 264 to 241 BCE, Rome versus Carthage. And I have to tell you that Carthage was a naval might. And imagine what we've talked about before with the triremes. And so you're having vessels such as that, triremes, quadremes, quintremes, that would have 5 banks of rowers, or quadreme, 4 banks of rowers, trireme, of course, 3 banks of rowers there. And that's the type of ship that you had. And for the Carthaginians, who were masters of warfare and naval warfare, they preferred to ram their opponent. That's what they like to do, ram the opponent and sink the opponent's ship. All right, for the Romans, however, they used a unique device, and I told you I don't draw very well. But let's say, for example, here that this is a Roman trireme, and I tried to draw in a sail at the top. This is the back of the ship. This is the front of the ship here. And what the Romans made use of was a device which was called a corvu. Now, I've spelled it out for you right here, a corvu. And what it's like, it's like I can't get my finger position right to show you what I'm talking about, so I'll quit doing that. But it's like a hook. So when the Romans get near the opposite ship, they will drop this corvu. Now, the corvu normally stays upright position. And when they near an opponent's ship, they will actually drop that corvu, and it goes to the opposite ship, and it pins the Roman ship against the Carthaginian ship, so that the Carthaginian ship cannot disengage. Now, the unique thing about the corvu, it also provides like a rampway, like a runway that's a couple of feet wide, so that now you can have your Marines to run across from the Roman ship and run across and board the Carthaginian ship and dispatch the crew there. It was not uncommon at all on the Corinthian side, for the Carthaginian side, for them to actually take poisonous snakes and put those poisonous snakes inside of a earthenware jar and have it sealed, and then actually throw it from the Carthaginian ship over to the Roman ship, and it breaks open, and suddenly you have withering around on the deck of the Roman ship, you have a cobra. And of course you can imagine what the reaction is to that. All right, so in the first of the Punic Wars, one of the principal figures to emerge was the Carthaginian leader called Hannibal Barca. And I hope you remember that name, Hannibal Barca. All right, now, as we end the war, the Carthaginians have to give up the island of Sicily, and I'm going to trust you understand where Sicily is, so I don't have to go back to my map here. And that's going to cause us to go into our second Punic War, which takes place from 218 to 202 BCE. And we'll get through this one today, and then I'll stop, and we won't go through the third Punic War today. But I want you to notice the name here, if we go above here, Hannibal Barca, and at the end of the first Punic War, the son of Hannibal Barca, who is known as Hannibal Barca, people referred to him as the Thunderbolt, he swore revenge against Rome for the remainder of his life. So Hannibal Barca had three sons. He had one son, which was called Hannibal Barca. I'm sure you've heard of him before. He had two other sons, one son which was known as Mago, one son known as Hasdrubal. Now, these three sons of Hannibal, Mago, and Hasdrubal, who would later all be generals in the Carthaginian army here, were referred to as the Lion's Brood. All right, so let's continue here with our war, and I'm going to have to go back to the camera here for this. Let me try to get a little bit lighter for you good folks here. And where the war actually begins, and I hope you can hear me here through the microphone because I'm going to have to look at my map here. But where the Carthaginians own this territory, but the Carthaginians had also taken Spain, this amount of Spain here. In fact, you can see the name of this town here, which is called New Carthage. Well, for Rome took this as a threat to their empire, because Rome controlled all of this area here. So where the area of dispute takes place is right here on the Ebro River, right here. So this would be Carthaginian claimed territory. This would be Roman claimed territory. And what Hannibal did, and Hannibal was the commander of the Carthaginian forces, he had a miracle weapon which was in the form of elephants. And he used these elephants like sledgehammers or like battle tanks here. And so what Hannibal was able to do was to take these elephants along with his army, and Hannibal was a magnificent leader, one of my favorite leaders, and move this army into this area across the Ebro River and push the Roman army back in this fashion right through here. And so a number of battles took place here. Let me go back to my documents camera so you can see the names of these battles here. Here we go, using the elephants, and then a couple of battles that take place. One that took place at Ticinus, one Lake Trasimene, another at Trabia. And what the principal Roman general was doing at the time was an individual by the name of Fabius. All right, now I'm going to try to use my fingers for this to try to demonstrate this. And what the Carthaginians would do, they would move up like this, and then they would meet the Roman army that was like this, and then the Carthaginians would deploy their army for battle formation, and as they did so, the Romans under Fabius would pull back. Then the Carthaginians would have to reform their army, move forward, whichever way I'm going here. And then the Romans would take their defensive positions and deploy. Then the Carthaginians would deploy, and then the Romans would withdraw again. And it's a very slow tactic here, and it's referred to in our modern day military as Fabian tactics here. It's a delaying type action here. Okay, so for Hannibal was able to cross the Pyrenees Mountains. Let's get this covered here. Cross the Pyrenees Mountains. I'm going to go back to my camera up here. And the Pyrenees Mountains are located here. He was able to cross into the Alps, enter into the Po Valley here. This is the Po Valley. It's very, very flat here, and was able to move upon Rome itself here. Now, the problem with Hannibal's army was too big to be defeated by the Romans, but it was not strong enough to defeat the Romans. Now, one of the engagements that's going to take place, and I'm going to go back to my documents camera in just a second, was an engagement that took place outside of Rome here at a place which is called Cannae. All right, let's go back to the camera, and let's see if I can show you how this engagement works here. And I like this. All right, we're going to see up here, let's get here. I'm going to have to darken my camera just a little bit. All right, I represented the Romans in blue. Here are the Romans, and the Carthaginians are in the red color here. And with Hannibal's Carthaginians engaged with the Romans. And for his central body here, he held the Romans in check. And held them in check so that they were locked in combat. And then Hannibal did a double envelopment in which he sent part of his force around the Roman left and part of it around the Roman right, and engaged in a double envelopment. All right, and defeated. I think it was like 50,000 Roman casualties that took place there at this wonderful victory here at Cannae. Today, in modern military and the army anyway, we refer to that and getting a double envelopment. We call it achieving a Cannae. All right, so the war dragged on. And we finally got up to about the year, if you will, around 205 BCE. And it looked like peace was going to take place here. And so the Carthaginians withdrew back into Carthage itself. And I'm talking about in the northern parts of Africa. Well, emerging out of this, however, was a Roman consul who became a general who was known as Scipio Africanus. And he had studied the tactics and studied these tactics here of Hannibal, and it was a student of Hannibal, as a matter of fact. Here, let's see if I can see what he looked like here, and I think I've got a likeness of him here, and I'll try to slide it under the camera here, and you can see what Scipio Africanus actually looked like. And so the Romans started the war once again. This time it's going to take place over in the homeland of Carthage. And it's going to engage in a battle which is called the Battle of Zama, or the Battle of Zama. It takes place in 202 BCE. And I've drawn another map for you right here to show you how it worked. And once again, we're going to see that Hannibal over here with the Carthaginians and Romans over here in the blue here. And Hannibal was using these elephants, and his intention was to take these elephants and charge it into the Roman lines and just disengage the Romans from the battle. But what Scipio had worked out, he formed his Roman legions, such as what I've widened right here, and up in this area he had like just 2 or 3 soldiers here that breached the gap between these legions. And when Hannibal attacked with his elephants, the elephants literally just went right through the lines of the Carthaginians of Hannibal. And for some of the elephants, they would return very fiercely, and actually ended up engaging with the Carthaginians here. And it ended up being a magnificent battle and a magnificent victory for Scipio Africanus, and a defeat for Hannibal. And this war is going to come to a conclusion in the year 202. Hannibal was not captured. He did escape. He would later commit suicide a few years later because he thought the Romans were going to capture him and then torture him and take his life here. As a result of this, Rome took over most of the area that Carthage controls, with the exception of the city of Carthage itself. They took many, many prisoners of war, 25,000 pieces of silver, I believe it was. And anyway, it was a magnificent victory for the Romans. All right, now when we return to the next time, we're going to continue our discussion here, talking about the Romans, we still have another war, which is the Third Carthaginian War, Third Punic War to take place. All right, thank you for your attention.